you think media representation of queer disabled folks affects how we are percepted in real life?
Firstly, I'd like to say what representation of queer disabled folks.
Actually, I thought about it, and I've never seen media representation of a queer disabled person, I don't think. I know lots of queer disabled people in real life, but I've never seen them in the media.
I'm having a very difficult time thinking of any queer disabled representation in the media.
I can't think of one, and that's disappointing and upsetting.
I think in general, media representation for people with disabilities is severely lacking. So add upon that aspects such as gender and sexuality, it's almost non-existent.
Given how the media represents people with disabilities in general, I don't have high hopes that it would do anything to help those stereotypes.
The few disabled characters that we do see within our media, they're not really, they're not sexual beings, and I think again that just helps to push the stereotype that, people with disabilities aren't interested in that stuff or don't have those desires and things like that.
I feel like if there was more representation in the media for disabled people, period, it would kind of demystify disabled people and give them some personhood, give them some humanity.
I think representations matter, and it's important to be able to identify with people who are in the media.
I think we really just need to broaden our view of what disability is and then how we portray that within our media.
Do you feel like LGBTQ plus places are accessible to you? Do you feel welcome in those spaces and visible in queer culture in general?
As far as wheelchair access, a lot of spaces have been accommodating to me, even if it's still a bit rough. And then again, there are quite a few spaces that are not wheelchair accessible at all. They'll have grand staircases, but no way to get to the second floor.
I think the nature of, LGBTQ spaces are that they are, pretty open and welcoming and accessible because, different, being a minority, everyone tends to try and help each other out. Obviously, that's not always the case. There is bias even amongst LGBT groups and stuff. But, generally they're pretty open and pretty welcoming. However, I think because the majority of people that make up those spaces are able-bodied, they still have this perception that people with disabilities aren't, sexual beings and don't have sexualities and different identities. Therefore, they're not really considered within that space. So I think it's really more of a, the disabled person will approach that group and then they will be welcoming, where I think we just need to have more education that, this is a group that is going to need access to these spaces and a group that should be considered.
I feel like LGBTQ spaces are accessible to me to a certain extent. I feel like everyone's really kind and welcoming, but at the same time, I feel like they don't really acknowledge ableism as a thing, which can get a little bit irritating after a while. Like, a lot of times I just feel like the token disabled person, and people feel as though they're obligated to listen to my perspective without really understanding what it means.
A lot of spaces in Toronto in general are not accessible, especially bars and clubs that are most LGBTQ plus spaces. They're in older buildings, and so there's just a lot of stairs, and sometimes when I can't do the stairs or if I have to use a scooter, I just not gonna be able to make it into that building, and I think that's difficult. A lot of LGBTQ plus spaces are also in bars, and I feel kind of uncomfortable in bars. It's not like I can't go to bars, but I feel uncomfortable there anyway because I don't drink, and I just think that it would be nice to have some more LGBTQ plus events that are in non-drinking spaces. I know there are some, but it'd be nice to have more.
I don't think we see a lot of disabilities in queer culture or in LGBT spaces, usually because of the lack of access, and as well as queer culture kind of has this very vain standard to it, like when it comes to the ideal body type of every person. There is a standard, there is an ideal, a beauty ideal, definitely, and being disabled almost has never fit into that ideal.